So forgiveness. Ooh. Here we go. I don't have many notes because I just wanted to, I know, shocking. I just wanted to talk from the heart. Well, is the screen frozen for you? Okay. Sorry, Mom, must be you. Hopefully you get it back on, but you can always watch the replay. Forgiveness. It's a little heavy. Feels a little heavy already, but it's okay. We'll make it through, I promise. If I can lead groups through this in hospice, we're good. So I will go ahead and get started. Anybody who just happens to join us a little bit later, or you can go back and watch the replay. If you're watching the replay, welcome. Thanks for joining me. So what is forgiveness? It's the conscious and deliberate action of release. Releasing emotions, any kind of feelings of resentment that you might be carrying from like an argument you had with a loved one, a friend, a situation, trauma. If you didn't watch my video on trauma, go back and watch it. And if you have questions, let me know. But it could be with one particular person. It could be with a whole group of people. I'm sure everybody by now has seen what's been going on the last couple of days. Yeah, right? The beauty of lives. You just never know what's going to happen. It's okay. Anyway, you all know what's been going on in this country, and it's just a dumpster fire, basically. But it's a great example of groups that feel oppressed, that feel wronged. There's just so much that I could say and so much in my brain, but I'm going to keep it as neutral as I can. So regardless if these people or this person deserves your forgiveness, forgiveness isn't for you. That's why I titled this For-GIFT-ness, because it's a gift that you give yourself. It's something that you do for yourself. You don't necessarily do it for the other person. Somebody might come to you and say, you know, I was really wrong. Please forgive me. And you might say, okay, sure, I forgive you. You might say, I don't know why you need forgiveness, but if you feel like you do, there you go, you got it. And other times people will say, no way. No. What you did is unforgivable in their eyes. It doesn't mean that they might not forgive you sometime down the road or that you're a horrible person. That doesn't necessarily mean that at all. It could just mean that in their opinion, they haven't been able to reach that place. So that's what this is about tonight, getting to that place of forgiveness. And it can take months, it could take years. Hopefully it doesn't take so long, and that's part of my journey, is to help you through some of that so that it doesn't take so long. Because there are so many things that when we carry the weight of the world on our shoulders, we can physically hunch down. We can look down. We might dim our light, might not have the confidence that we need to get through life every day. It's like trauma, like I was talking about in that video. Like I said, go back and watch it if you didn't see it live or haven't watched it yet. But forgiveness in general can just be really hard. It can be hard for us to forgive ourselves. We might feel like there's nothing we can do to make ourselves feel better. And that is a horrible burden to bear. Don't do that. Don't do that. Get to a place where you can forgive at least yourself or the situation. If you can't forgive the person, there are some things that collectively I think we can pretty much agree. Hi, Mom, welcome back. That we can pretty much agree are horrible. Hi, Jackie. That we can agree are pretty horrible offenses. Rape, sexual assault in general, abuse, domestic violence, just things that are really, really hard to forgive, especially if the person, whether the perpetrator or the victim, is no longer with us, if they've crossed over. That can be really difficult as well. So it doesn't mean that you're forgiving, or I'm sorry, you are forgiving, that you're forgetting, condoning the behavior or the action, or excusing it in any way. It just means that you're letting the resentment part go. You don't have to forget what the person did to you. Sometimes it's a good idea to keep the lesson, but let the rest of it go. Keep the good, let the rest of it go. You have to take, in grief recovery, we talk about your 1% responsibility. And people think, how on earth was that? I didn't ask to be abused. I didn't ask to be attacked. I didn't ask for my loved one who was innocently driving home from work to be hit head on by a drunk driver. No, of course not. Nobody that I have ever encountered would ask for something like that. But your 1% responsibility is about you. It's about how you react. And it's about if you choose to carry that burden for the rest of your life, or if you choose to let it go. So that 1% is how you react, how you live with it. Don't let anybody take your power. That's yours. So remember the good. Find the lesson if you can. What is this teaching me? And I know in the throes of it, especially using the car accident, if we lost someone we love in that scenario, it can be really hard to find a lesson. What is that? It's there, I promise. If nothing else, the lesson is to forgive yourself. So what can we do to forgive? One of the things that I have found most helpful is to align or reconnect with Source, God, Goddess, Universe, whatever it is that is your name for your faith. Reconnect, realign. Switch the focus from blame, which is very much victim mentality, to healing yourself. Can you see it from the other person's perspective? And using that situation or an abusive situation, it might be hard to put yourself in the other person's shoes and why they made the choices that they made. If nothing else, they made the choice to not heal and forgive whatever their trauma is that has caused them to do those things. So you get out of that victim mentality and get into the perspective from the other person or God's perspective. Try to look at it through God's eyes. How does God see what happened? So in that same example, if the person is deceased, then how do you forgive? So say you've been holding this grudge for so long over somebody in your life who abused you. Maybe it was a stepfather who abused you, and he passed away. So then we get to kind of this disconnection. What do? I want to forgive this, but he's no longer here. I can't look at him. I can't hear his side of the story. I can't necessarily put myself in that position. I don't know what happened in his childhood. I don't know, etc. What does that mean? So when we can get from that kind of hopeless, helpless situation back to how can I see it through someone else's eyes? How can I forgive the situation? How can I forgive someone who isn't here to speak for themselves? Again, you're forgiving yourself, taking that 1% responsibility, forgiving the situation. And maybe through that work, you can get to healing the hurt and then forgiving that person. What if we no longer speak? And that's almost worse. So what if you have someone in your life that you feel like you need forgiveness from, or you want to give forgiveness to, and that's kind of your last step. Like, I want to tell this person that I forgive them and maybe reconnect in some way, but they won't talk to you. I've been on both sides of that fence. And neither one of them feels any better than the other. It's all about being ready. When you're ready to forgive, the situation will pan out. Because even if it's you that feels like I need to tell them that I forgive them, their soul knows. Inherently, their soul knows that they are forgiven. So one of the things that you can do is you can write a letter. maybe if the person is deceased, or if you just no longer speak, you can still write a letter and then burn it, bury it, tear it into shreds, whatever your release is that feels right for you. And then you can also work with someone like me through energy healing. We can get, through Reiki, we can get into the chakras. We can take a look around, scoop and release, and work energy that way. And you can also, if you're the one that needs forgiveness and that person won't speak to you or can't speak to you directly, then the same thing. You can write a letter to that person, or you could write it from what you think would be that person's perspective to you. But again, this comes back to you. You take responsibility for your healing. So when we hold on to this hurt, it keeps us from growing and from ultimately being happy. So there's this wonderful, Tish has it usually on her page. I've seen it where it's a pair of hands and it's holding onto a rope. And it says the tighter that we hold onto that rope, and they're bleeding and they're red and they're scuffed. And then when you release, that's when true healing can occur, and then the hands are normal again. So when we hold on to that, it's like holding onto that rope. We just hurt ourselves. When we carry that burden, we just continue to hurt ourselves, not just emotionally, but also physically. Like I said, you can hunch down. I mean, obviously, I'm a proponent of chiropractors, so you can see a chiropractor or a massage therapist, but ultimately, you have to be able to forgive yourself, because what you're doing is you're protecting your heart chakra when you hunch over, and your solar plexus, which goes with worthiness. So, hi, Amber. Speaking of massage therapists, oh, I feel so much better after I saw you the other day. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Anyway, I digress. So when we're hunched over, we're protecting our heart chakra and our solar plexus, which is our worthiness. So we're collapsing on top of those chakras, and they're getting out of alignment, they're getting unbalanced. That just leads to a myriad of issues. So when we can release that and work through it, then we can open back up. We can open ourselves back up to love, loving ourselves, loving others, and that opens the way for forgiveness as well. So what if other people are involved? What if our family or there are children involved? This happens with divorce situations. So what do I do if I'm getting divorced, or if, yay, I'm so glad you're here too. What if this doesn't just affect me? What if my spouse cheated and we just couldn't get to the part where we could forgive enough to stay together? We just decided that wasn't the thing to do. So we are now not just talking about us, but now we're talking about other people too. So obviously the children are the innocent bystanders, and we're going to, hi Phineas, you want to come on camera? No? Okay. He's being camera shy tonight. Maybe he'll come up later. Made me lose my train of thought. Children are the innocent bystanders. So they're the ones who are also affected. So later down the road, if they haven't had parents who healed from that situation and who could get to the part where they forgive each other, or at least one parent can forgive, then they could carry that trauma on with them through adulthood. And sometimes they might not even know why, but it could affect their relationships. It could affect their feelings of worthiness. So what do we do when they're involved, or when it affects our family? Like sometimes a spouse is so integrated within our family that we're just having such a hard time releasing that relationship, then that can have an adverse effect with our family. So there could be some tension. And I know I personally went through that myself, where Michael was very little when Neil and I decided that we were going to end our marriage. And there were times when it affected my relationship with my wonderful parents. So though I was deeply hurting, I had to figure out how to make sure that that didn't get projected onto Michael, and that the best possible situation for him could occur without damaging any of my other relationships. And then there are times, especially when you have children, that you have to think about what happens when we get together. So there's going to be graduations or weddings or funerals. So there are times that we're going to have to see and interact with those estranged family members. And it's not always pretty. So the best thing that we can do is we can work on forgiveness. Because at least if I can forgive the situation, I can forgive myself. My ex-husband never asked for forgiveness. Ever. Not once. To this day has he ever asked for an ounce of forgiveness. And that's okay. I got to the point where I realized, didn't need to. This is about me. So when I could forgive everything that happened, and I moved on, and I straightened my spine, I know that when the time comes and I'm faced with my former in-laws, that I can walk into the room with my head held high. And that's the ultimate goal. Because they don't have to, if they see something within me and they feel like I can't forgive her for whatever I didn't do, whatever they perceive that I did, that's fine. They don't have to, because it's not about them. That's for them in their journey. But I got to the point where I could forgive. I could forgive the situation. I could forgive myself. And I could even pre-forgive them for how they may treat me down the road. And when we do that kind of work, that is soul work. And it did not happen overnight. I promise it did not. It takes a long time to get through it. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it, because now I'm healed to the point where I can go and I can face them. I don't have to avoid a situation. I don't have to avoid going to my own son's graduation. I don't have to avoid going to whatever might be going on, a funeral for a mutual friend, just because I don't want to see somebody. And it's also made our co-parenting so much easier. So that brings me to how things might not be the same. So one of the things about forgiveness is, if it's someone that we do still have to interact with, or that we do choose to interact with, that relationship, after the action occurs, and once we move into forgiveness, we have to remember that that relationship might not ever be the same again. And that's okay. Actually, it shouldn't ever be the same, because things have changed. Now, I'm not saying that you can't ever love that person again, or trust that person again, or be alone in the same room with that person again. Not at all what I'm saying. That can happen, but that's where boundaries are really important. Maybe I'll do a whole live on boundaries. That might be a good one. We'll write that down. So we have to evolve past the point where we can move into forgiveness, and we can understand that those relationships, it might be difficult at first. It might be really hard to let that person back in if you feel like they've hurt you, if they've betrayed your trust, if they've hurt you or a family member or your child. I've always said, if anybody hurts my kid, I'll just leave it at that. I'm a mama bear. So it takes a lot to be able to let that person back in, to be vulnerable enough for them to be able to potentially hurt you again. And that's always the risk that you take, but it can be worth it. So just remember to avoid blame on either part. Don't blame yourself. If you let them back in and something happens again, that's okay. Don't blame yourself. Don't go, oh, I was an idiot. I should have known. I should have never let that happen. They hurt me once, they'll hurt me again. Not necessarily. Sometimes things, I posted this last week. Sometimes things fall apart so that better things can fall into place. Whether it's something totally different or that situation falls apart so that it can come back together even stronger. So 2 things came to mind when I said that. One was a mosaic. So that's made completely out of broken pieces that are put back together in a beautiful way to make a redesign. So you could have this beautiful blue glass bowl and you drop it and it just shatters. You have 2 options. Be upset because it's not the way that it used to be and it never will be again. Even if you glued it back together, it wouldn't look the same, it might not function the same, and it would be more prone to break again. Or you can pick up the pieces and you can make something beautiful out of it. So what you choose to do is completely up to you. And that's your prerogative. That's your free will. Your journey is your journey. And no one can tell you what to do. And you shouldn't tell anybody else what they should do. Even in that relationship, this is what you need to do in order for this to work. Going back to my ex-husband, that's what I told him. If you want this to work, these are the things you have to do. And he was like, nope. I just want to pretend like everything's okay and we're still married. It's like, nope, that's not how this is going to work. And that's okay because it wasn't supposed to. So with that mosaic, and we put it back together and make something still just as beautiful, if not more so. You can take the pieces and redo it. But either way, you have to own your part. That is totally up to you. Whatever part you had in this, don't blame yourself. Don't blame the other person. Just know that it is. It just is. The choice is ultimately yours. But if you do choose to let somebody back in to your life, whether it's a friend, a family member, or a love, just know that it's best to take things slowly and remember, especially if it's been some amount of time, they may have changed. I know I certainly have grown exponentially throughout the last 11 years. And that's great because that's pretty much what's supposed to happen. Even in the last 5 years, I am not the same person that I was. And that's the way that it's supposed to be. So just remember to take things slowly, give each other time, recognize that people and situations and circumstances may have changed for better or for worse. Sometimes people glow up and sometimes people crash and burn. Just meet each other where you are and honor your own path and your own journey. Be gentle. Be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with them, especially if they're the one that crashed and burned. Just be careful and be gentle. And I don't mean careful like guarded. I mean careful as in careful. Be full of care. Show love. Just accept that things may have changed, probably did change, and that's okay. But make time for each other. Really give it a fair shot. And remember to take time for self-care. Take time out if you need a break, like this is moving a little fast, or this isn't quite going the direction that I wanted it to, or thought that it should go, or that I want to go on my path. That's okay. You can separate again. Sometimes, and I've had this situation with friends, sometimes you can forgive each other and come back into each other's lives, but then realize that you're on very different paths. You met each other where you were, but they want to go this way and you want to go that way, and that's okay. You don't have to go together. Maybe your paths will cross again. Maybe they won't. And that's okay. Just keep in mind that when you truly forgive someone, You're not trying to control the situation. You're not trying to control that person. You let go of control. You release that. And when you do, forgiveness is good for the body and the soul. So just as much as you can hunch over and you can have stress or sleep issues, eating disorders, get into addictions, the converse is true when we forgive. So you have a decreased risk of heart issues. You can get better sleep. You have more inner peace. You get to a state where things are just good. They're really, really good. And I think that's where we all want to operate from, is that place of peace. And that's what forgiveness is all about. That's that gift you give to yourself. Finding that inner peace, knowing that you are a divine being of God, from God, by God, source, universe, whatever it is that you call it. So that's pretty much my spiel on forgiveness. Does anyone have questions or comments? And if you have something personal that you want to talk about, you can always message me. We can set up a session. We can talk about your personal situation. Whatever it is that you want to accomplish in your healing, be gentle with yourself. It takes time. I can talk some more about what to do if you can't speak with that person, if you would like me to. I know that tends to be the one that's usually the most difficult for people, when we can't, hi Brian, when we can't talk to that person, whether it's because they won't speak to us, or we're afraid to reach out because we're afraid of their reaction, or they're deceased, or they have, maybe they have Alzheimer's and they can't talk to you anymore about what happened. I hate to use the word closure, because that gets such, I think we throw that word around. Oh, you just need to get closure on it, or forgive and forget. Not necessarily. It's not always easy. It's hard enough to forgive, let alone forget. You don't have to forget. You just have to, well, you don't have to do anything. You have free will. But if you want to heal, you do need to get to that place of taking that 1% responsibility for your actions, how you're reacting, what you're choosing to carry with you, and what you choose to let go. So I think forgive and forget gets thrown around because it's a matter of what they're really trying to say. Forgive yourself. Forgive the situation. Find that place of peace. You don't have to forget at all what happened. If somebody abused you, you do not have to forget that. It might be to your detriment to forget it, because you could put yourself right back into a position where that person or someone else can hurt you. So that's where we need to work on forgiveness and recognizing patterns and drawing those boundaries. I think the next live will be about boundaries. Help me remember that. So when we can't talk to a person because they're not speaking to us, or we're afraid to reach out because we don't know how far they are on their healing journey, if they even give a, trying to keep it PG, if they even give a damn, it can be really, truly terrifying to be vulnerable, to put yourself out there. But really, if you don't, oh, my ear's gone. If you don't get to the point where you can take that 1% responsibility, allow yourself to forgive and to be vulnerable, then why are you even here? When we can't, because that person is deceased, or they have Alzheimer's, or we've just lost so much contact with them and maybe they're off the grid. I mean, most people have social media of some sort, but maybe we can't talk to that person for whatever reason it is. How do we go about forgiving? So that's when we come back to, okay, what happened? So say you had a really bad breakup. You were with someone for some years, and we're just going to take marriage out of it. Let's just say you were with somebody for a number of years, and they betrayed your trust in some way. And you ended it on not the greatest terms, and you went your separate ways and you never spoke again. You basically blocked that person. You wrote them off as if they were dead. And then you come back some years later and you've evolved, and now we need to work on forgiveness. But you can't talk to that person about what they did. And healing is messy, especially at first. Not gonna lie. It's messy. So the first thing that we do is we acknowledge. It's like the trauma. You recognize it. You step back and you take a look and you see it from your perspective first. First person perspective of what happened. And then turn it around. So when this was happening in your perspective, what do you think the other person was seeing? And then flip it to a third party. Take yourself out and watch it. Watch that interaction happen from a third person perspective. Whether it's a casual observer, an angel, whatever you want to say. Third party. Take a look and see it through their perspective. How does that shift the dynamic? It's not going to change what happened. That's not what the goal is in this exercise. It's just to see how you're romanticizing or completely, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm just going to go with it. Completely cursing the entire situation and just being all kinds of angry. And then from the casual observer, how does this actually look? So then once we get through that part, then we can take a look and see, how does that affect you? How did that affect you then? And now taking a look at it from where you are in life, how does it look? How does it affect you? Does it continue to affect you? Does it still hurt just as much as it did that day? That's when we start working on healing. We start working on that forgiveness piece. So when you can come in and you can take a look, not only at yourself, but at the other person, that's when we can move into forgiveness. So you can take responsibility. Like, I was absolutely awful. I can't believe I said those things. I can't believe I did that. I made idle threats, whatever it might be. I packed up a bag of all my stuff and I just walked out. And I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish I would have gone back and maybe given it another chance. I didn't try hard enough. Now we're moving into blaming. Or conversely, they packed a bag and they left me and my child, or whatever the situation might be. Now we're in victimhood. So then we can start to break that down and kind of look at it from another perspective, rather than blaming anybody in the situation. What happened, happened. Now you need to forgive. Forgive yourself, forgive the situation, and then you can move into forgiving the other person, whether they deserve it or not. It's not about them. You don't have to look up that person and say, I just want you to know I forgive you. You don't have to do that. You don't have to go that far. That's where the letter writing can really come in handy, so to speak. So you can get everything out. There's a lot to be said for journaling, and it took me a lot of years to be able to journal. I've never been someone who kept a diary. I still really don't. But when I went through grief recovery, it forced me to write things down. It forced me to write those letters. And I have things that have come up since then, let alone what I didn't deal with back then. And so see, healers aren't perfect either. But now we have to deal with a situation where we're the ones that are ultimately responsible. So another situation that I personally am dealing with, that I haven't done all of the grief process in it. My birth mother, I was adopted, for those of you who might not know or forgot, but I was adopted when I was the baby. And my birth family did not find me until about 8 months after my birth mother passed away. So I never got to meet her. I never got to talk to her. I never got to hear her experience from her perspective. I heard it from other people's perspectives, but I never heard it first person. And that is something that I have to deal with. That is something that I have to forgive. That's a situation. I don't need to forgive her at all. I am grateful to her for what she did and the selfless decision that she made that had to have been absolutely heart-wrenching. As a mother, I can feel how heart-wrenching that would be. And also as a mother, I can understand how she would want the best for her child. But I need to forgive the situation where I can't talk to her. I can't hear her. I can't ask her questions. And I need to take my 1% responsibility for how I react to it and how I choose to deal with it. And then forgive the situation of not being able to have those conversations with her. People will say, well, you can be mad at God all you want because it doesn't matter. He'll forgive you. He can take it. Or she, goddess, universe. Again, how you identify. And that's true. I spent a few minutes being mad about the situation. And then I pulled back and I'm like, all right, it's okay. I will forgive. I aligned and reconnected with source, like I said, and switched the focus from being in victimhood of, oh, I'll never get to healing and knowing that everything happened for the highest and greatest good. So I got this great deck and I thought that it was pertinent for this evening. It's an angel deck. And I'm going to pull a card for what we've been talking about. I know that there is an angel of forgiveness card in here, and that would be hilarious if it popped out. But I thought, while I have a captive audience, I would go ahead and pull a card. And they're just absolutely beautiful. For some guidance around forgiveness. And while I'm doing that, if anybody has any questions, go ahead and type it. Because I know that there is a little bit of a delay between what I might see, and my lovely assistant can help me as well if I miss something, because it doesn't always show up the same way. All right, let's see what they're going to say. Oh, Angel of Families. If you can see it. It's a beautiful card. And don't worry about the orientation. The Angel of Families is, I think, perfect for right now, because that is one of the top 3, I'd say, things that we encounter with forgiveness. Because ultimately, we want to be with our family unit, whatever that might look like. So when we can forgive, and our families are usually our closest relationships, right? So when we can get into forgiveness, it does heal our familial relationships. So I think that's pretty awesome. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to me ramble. I appreciate it. It's hard to try to generalize forgiveness when there are so many situations that can occur. And I wanted to be able to give you some action steps that you can utilize, like taking your own responsibility, remembering the good, finding the lesson, that realigning with your higher self and with source, and switching the focus from blaming and victimhood into healing. So if you have questions, feel free to contact me. You can reach out to me through Facebook Messenger, through my email, willowtreeheals@gmail.com. Thanks, Rick. Or you can, if you have my phone number, you can text me. And we can talk about it. If you have questions, if you'd like to book a session to do some energy healing, or card readings, whatever it looks like for you, some channeling, we can certainly do that as well. So I hope that this has been at least informative, if nothing else, and that you're able to find something here that works for you. So have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.